Okay, got my fabric all trimmed. Now this is where it's really important to follow along with the printout, because I'm looking thinking, well, what's happening now? If I would think that, she'd be doing a zigzag stitch around the outside of the head, but it has changed. So number 15 is a zigzag stitch for pieces number 2 and 3. So we'll go ahead and stitch this one out. This is a 2-minute stitch out. I'm going to leave the same thread color in because we're going to do a little bit of a decorative stitch now around his little face. He starts to look really, really cute when you start putting his little face on. But this particular stitch now, this is number 17, and it is going to do the decorative stitch all the way around the body and around the head. So it's about a 4-minute stitch out. So I'm going to stop the video here while it stitches out, and we'll pick it up when it's done. And we're back. So we are now on stitch number 18. And again, if you're following along on the pattern, which you should be, it is a placement stitch for piece number 4, which is part of his little face. So I am going to leave the same thread color in right now and just do my placement stitch. So now what we're going to do is lay down our piece number 4. Now piece number 4 is the part that all the eyes and stuff go on. He starts to really look cute now. If this fabric that you're using for his eyes is a super light color and you're going to be able to see this color in behind, you might want to trim that off. Just be really super careful when you're at the edges. But with mine, it's not. So I'm going to leave that intact. And I just want to make sure that my piece of fabric is big enough, and I'm going to tack this one down. Here we go. We'll cut around his little face. I need to go back in here and just do a little bit of trimming. This is going to get covered over with some stitches, but you still want to get pretty close, especially in the little nooks and crannies, like right there. And along here. That's looking pretty good. So back to the sewing machine. Here we are back at the sewing machine, and I have trimmed off all the way around the outside of his little face. Now we're going to be doing a placement stitch for a ring that goes around the outside of his face. So, and I do know that I'm going to be using a goldy colored fabric for that. So I have rethreaded my machine with gold, and now we're ready to do the placement stitch. I'm using a goldy color for his little face. So I want to make sure that when I'm putting this one on, that I actually have fabric big enough to go around the outside rim. I don't want to line it up to the inside rim. I want to line it up to the outside. So make sure you have a big enough piece of fabric, and off we go. To the cutting desk. Now this one is a little bit trickier of a cut. So first what we want to do is cut away all the fabric around the outside edge of his little face. And as always, get as close as you can without, of course, cutting into the underneath fabric. I think that's where the curve on these scissors comes in. It really makes it a lot easier to not cut the underneath piece of fabric. There we go. Okay, now this next step, just make sure I want to do a little extra trim right there. Okay, this next step is the trickier step, because what we want to do is cut away the fabric on the inside, but we want to make sure we don't cut the fabric we put down just before this one. So you want to take just a little tiny, pick up the piece of fabric with your scissors and just take a tiny, tiny little nick, and just make sure that you've only got one of those pieces of fabric. You don't want to get both. There we go. And once you have a little nick, it's a little easier to see what you're doing. So now I'm going to go right up to that stitch line, and I'm going to start trimming away this outer gold fabric. Now you want to be careful that you don't trim away your other fabric. So go all the way around. Again, get as close as you possibly can to the stitching. I always figure that this is where his little face really starts to look like a little face. There. Okay. Back to the sewing machine. And we are back at the sewing machine. So we finished clipping out here, being careful not to clip the underneath fabric. Now what we're going to do is the zigzag stitch to tack down around the gold part right here. And it is about a 2-minute stitch out. Okay, we're now on color number 23. So these are going to be the decorative stitches on his little face. So I have changed my thread color to a lighter beige, and off we go. Now 24 is an outline stitch here, and it's going to do some outline around the beak. I just kept the same color of thread in there, but you can use a different color of thread. I love all these details that Anna has put into the design. Just so much attention to detail. I have now changed back to my decorative thread stitch color that's going to go around his face, because that's our next step. And it's about a 1-minute stitch out. We are now ready to do his little beak. Now I have chosen a cotton variegated thread just to do the beak part, and then another cotton to outline the beak, which is the next step. You don't necessarily have to use rayons. You are free to use a multitude of different threads. What you just need to be careful of is having too thick of a thread. So this thread that I'm using up here is a 40 weight. I wouldn't want to try to stitch this out with a 12 weight because it would just be far, far too dense. So you want to try to keep your weights similar. So here we go, and this is a 1-minute stitch out, so off we go. Now for the outline, changed my stitch, my thread. And there we go, my first thread break. Not a big deal, just make sure that once you've rethreaded the machine, you're going to back it up a couple of stitches. And off you go again. Now we're going to do the decorative feather stitch around the outside of the face. But if you take a look for just a minute, once you start getting those facial features in there, this little guy really starts coming alive, and just wait till we get to the eyes. Anna's digitizing. It has a way of making them sparkle. Now we've come to the part that I like the best, because this part of the stitching just actually brings your little guy right to life. We're starting with the eyes, and I do love the way that Anna has digitized the eyes. So we start with a little bit of highlight on the white, and we're going to do like 5 stitches, and then have to change the thread color again. Well, maybe a couple more than 5. The main part of the eyes is stitched out with 2 different colors, and she really makes those eyes sparkle. So I decided I want this little guy to have green eyes. They don't have to be realistic. And I'm going to use a darker green on the underneath color, and then a lighter green on the secondary color. Ready for the second color of the eye, and I have chosen a lime green to go over top of that. See how she just gets that eye to sparkle? So cute! Now with these eyes, I have stitched this out with, let's see if we can just get in there a little closer. I have stitched that out with a metallic as the second color, and they come alive. They're just so beautiful. And now this is our last color, and it's a black to do the inside of the eye. There we have it. We are done. So just slide the hoop out, and let's go back over to the cutting table. Okay, just snap him out of the hoop. Now, if you use the Wonder Tape, he'll be a little bit sticky, but don't worry about that. The tape can stay on the back of your hoop for about 2 or 3 hoopings, and then I peel it off and replace it with new Wonder Tape. Get that out of the way. Now, all I will do at this point is actually just cut away the excess stabilizer. I'm going to wait to trim the block down until I decide exactly what I'm going to do with these, whether they're going to be a quilt, and well, actually I know mine are going to be a quilt, but if I trim it now, I might limit my choices later on as to what I'm going to do. So I'll keep them, get all my blocks done, and then I'll trim all my blocks at the same time. And there you have it. They are just so cute.